Okay, welcome everyone, and a guten Zuma to everyone. I already wish you that last night. It was wonderful to have so many people on last night's marathon. And we are continuing in our tour through this Masechta, not an easy Masechta, sponsored by A.B. Spry, the Fur Shalema for Taiba Reise Bas Hinda, and for great zivugim for their daughter and grandchildren. Also by Shelley Zeitlin for his wonderful children, Eli, Orit, and Ora. The Fur Shalema for Shimon ben Sarah Miriam, and Moshe Meir ben Esther Fadel. Also an anonymous donor for the spiritual, emotional, and physical protection of Yeshua Menachem Mendel ben Bela Shendel Rivka. Also, Rabbi Kranz asks us to learn for his father's yahrzeit, Reb Shol ben Reb Chaim Zev Alevi. He should be a Melitz Yosher for the whole family. We'll have a lichtige Gan Eden. We are discussing, and it's going to be the topic of most of tonight's daf. We are discussing that by Shavuos Daf, the only time that this oath of testimony requires one to swear is when it's about money. So, for example, if I ask Yitz and Menachem, if I ask them that they should testify that I'm a Kohen or I'm a Levi, that would not be Shavuos Ha'edus. It has to be about money. So now Reb Shimon tells us yet his opinion of why this is so, and we are holding by Reb Shimon Aimer, which is 5 lines from the bottom of Lamed Gimel Lamed Beis. Reb Shimon Aimer Chayiv Kan, one is Chayiv by Shavuos Ha'edus, a carbon, the Chayiv b'Pikadon. And one is chayiv by a deposit. Shvua about a deposit. Mala halon eina medaber ela b'tvias mammon, where there's a claim of money. Avkan, so also by Shavuos Ha'edus eina medaber ela b'tvias mammon. And not only that, but it's a kal v'chomer, it's a 40 ori. V'ayid kal v'chomer ma pikadain she'asa by noshim kanashim. Shvua about a deposit applies if I give a deposit to a woman, so she could swear. So it's women like men. It could be a relative like a stranger. It could apply to somebody who has a deposit who's a gambler. And not only that, al kol achas v'achas b'fnei bezdin v'shaloi b'fnei bezdin. You're chayiv for every shvua, even if it was said in the presence of Bezdin. And yet, Eina medaber ela b'tvias mammon, it's only with a claim of money. The Shavuos B'Kadon is only with a claim of money. Eidos, shaloi asaba nashim kanashim, they didn't make women like men. Krivim kirachakim, relatives like strangers. Psulim kiksherim, one who was puzzled like a kosher. Because we said once you swear that you don't know the edus, so you can't change your testimony. Says the Gemara, not so fast. Mali pikodon, a deposit, shekain loy asa by mushba kenishba or mezid kishage. By a deposit, it's only if the one who has the deposit swears himself, and not where you administer an oath to him. And it's only if he did the oath unwittingly, not if he did it willfully. Timer be'edus, ma'asha enkein ba'shvuos edus, shekein asaba mushba kenishba, you could administer the oath, and mezid kishagig chayiv even if it's willful. Talmud Leimer, Reb Shimon says the bottom line is we have a gzeira shava. Talmud Leimer techata l'gzeira shava. Nemar Khan, it says over here by Shavuos Edus Techete, V'nem Lahalan, and it says by Pikadon Techete, Ma Lahalan, just like over there, Eina Medaber Ela B'Tvias Mammon, a claim of money, Afkan, Eina Medaber Ela B'Tvias Mammon. So now, we're going to go through the different derivations. We had different derivations that we know Shavuos Edus is only with his Tvias Mammon. The first derivation is, we had a very quaint word that we never had before. It says O. Ora O Yoda. So it says O by Shavuos Edus. It's almost, you're tempted to say uh-oh, but it's not uh-oh, it's O, right? So it says O over here, and it says O by Pikadon. Just like the O that it says by Pikadon is only with a claim of money. So the O that it says over here. So Rabba Barul, now we asked from Rotzeach, we asked from Saita, we said Rotzeach doesn't apply because it doesn't say Shvuah by Rotzeach. We said Saita doesn't apply because there's a Kayin. But Rabba Barula has another question up his sleeve. Maskavla Rabba Barula O Bito Yoichichu. It says by a Shavuos Bito, by an oath of utterance, also O. And over there, an oath of utterance applies even if there is no claim of money. There it's even if you swear that you won't eat. Says, well, O Bito Yoichichu, Shehu Oed, it has an O. V'yeshimam shvuah, and there is an oath. Ve'enimam kayin, and there's no kayin. Umedabrim shaloi b'tvias mammon, and it's talking about where there's no claim of money. Says the Gemara, you're right. You have a choice to compare Shavuos Edus either to Shavuos Bitoy, an oath of utterance, or Shavuos Pikadon, an oath about a deposit. Mistavra mipikadon havalei l'meila. It's more reasonable to learn it out from Shavuos Pikadon. Shekain techete mitechete, because there you have a Gzeir Shava also techete. Says the Gemara, Adarabba mibitoy avalei l'meilach. Learn it out from bitoy, because Shekain by a Shavuos Bitoy, it says by both of them chet, both of them chatas. Shekain chatas mechatas. It says by both of them chatas. Ella says the Gemara, let's see to where it's more analogous. Ella mistavra mipikadon avalei l'meilach. It's more reasonable to say that we learn it out from Shavuos Pikadon. Shekain, because look at all of these similarities. Excuse me. First of all, by Shavuos Pikadon it says Techete, the Lashon of Chet, and it says it by Shavuos Edus. B'mezid, both the okay, so we said not this way earlier, but this is the Shita of the Mishnah. The Mishnah said that you're chayiv for Shavuos Pikadon, also if you knew that you're lying. But that's not the case of a Shavuos Bitoy, an oath of utterance, where it says v'nelam, you're only chayiv if you're unaware. So that's a similarity between Shavuos Ha'edus and Shavuos B'Kadon. Both are tovei, there's a claim. By Shavuos Ha'edus, there's a claim for testimony, and by Shavuos B'Kadon, there's a claim for the deposit. V'kafrei, both there's a denial. And the Ovrei, they're both in the past. One is about testimony in the past, and one is about a deposit that's given. A Shavuos Bitoy could also be in the future. Says the Gemara, Adarabba, B'Bitoy havi leila melef, we should learn it out from an oath of an utterance. Shekein chatis, both of them have the lashon of chatas, and there's a din of chaimish. By both of them, also sheyarda. It's a carbon oila v'yayreit. The Shavuos Bitoy and Shavuos Ha'edus both have the sliding scale carbon, while Shavuos B'Kadon has a fixed carbon. And L'chaimish, both have a fifth, while Shavuos Ha'edus doesn't have a fifth. Says, well, you're right, that's 3, but the other one, I believe, is 5. Yeah, it's 3 against 5. Hanach nefishin. So it's more similar to Shavuos B'Kadon. So therefore we learn out Shavuos Ha'edus from Shavuos B'Kadon, just like Shavuos B'Kadon is only where there's a tvias mammon, where there's a tine of money. So also by Shavuos Ha'edus. Now Rabbi Kiva learns it out from a miyut. Rabbi Kiva Aimer, remember we're learning how Rabbi Akiva knows that Shavuos Ha'edus is only by a tvias mammon, where there's a claim of money. Rabbi Akiva Aimer v'hoya ki yesham la'achas me'ela. If he's guilty from one from these, yesh me'ela is a miyut. Yesh me'ela shul chayiv, yesh me'ela shul pater. Okay, tzad tovu mammon, if there's a claim of money, chayiv. Tovu davar acher, if it's claimed that he's a kohen, Potter. Says the Gemara, how do you know? Maybe Eipachana, maybe reverse it. Says the Gemara, Eipachana, maybe reverse it. Okay, now that we have 30 Zoomers, I think it's high time that we welcome everybody in. So we welcome in Shelley Zeitlin, Mel Zachter, Dr. Guy, Rabbi Kranz, Eddie Chazan, Irving Fishbaum, Yitzi Fuchs, Shimon Klein, Saba, Chaim Lerner, Yitzi Muller, Shalom Fogel, Yaakov Warman, Danny Vogel. Good to see you, Danny. Menachem Yamansky, Dov Solkowitz, Barry Cement, Rabbi Kranz, Stephen Holtzman, Dr. Yudel, Moshe Lehman, Berish Gesserman. Berish Gesserman had a hard day today. Drove early in the morning to Boston for a funeral, and now probably he's back from Boston back into Muncie. So, and yet he comes in. Good for you, Berish. Kiddush Hashem. Nachman Chapler, Naftali Jablin, Avram Rezepkowitz, Yeshua Shmuel Eisenberg, A. Barbach, Ilya Shutman, Reb Kaniel. Ilya, give us your wife's name. Okay, he's not getting to the microphone now. Okay.
Rabbi, her name is Ruth. The father's name is Eugene. Can you have
Ruth Bas Eugene. Her neshama should have a lichtige Gan Eden. Says the Gemara, Eipachana, maybe Adrabah, maybe the Shavuos Ha'edus is only by non-money things, and what we exclude from Me'ela is where there is money. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Akiva A'oin de Rebbe Eliezer Samach. He also relies on the limit of Ai from Bikad. Just he learns out a miyut, a limitation, from Me'ela. So my Beinayim, What does Rabbi Eliezer hold that Rabbi Akiva excludes? My beinayo says the Gemara. My beinayo bein Rabbi Eliezer bein Rabbi Akiva. What's between them? Ika beinayo mashbia eidei karka. The difference is if you impose witnesses about real estate. Rabbi Eliezer chayavin. According to Rabbi Eliezer, Yechayev, Rabbi Akiva Peturin. According to Rabbi Akiva, Yapata from the Miyad of Me'ela. It says the Gemara, Rabbi Yechon and Dama Hosba Mashibia Eide Karka Afilu Rabbi Eliezer Peturin, because Ein Nishban ala Karkais. Hacha Mai Ika Bein Rabbi Eliezer to Rabbi Akiva. Ika Beinayu Eide Knas. The difference is Eide Knas, which was a question that we had earlier. If it's testimony about a penalty, like if they know testimony about someone that maligned his young wife and said he didn't find Basulim, and they had no testimony that she was a virgin, they saw the cloth and that she was a virgin, and they know that she is being maligned. So, is there a Shavuos Eidus about a Knas? So Rabbi Eliezer will say yes, and Rabbi Akiva will say no. Okay, now we're on to the next derivation. Rabbi Yossi Aglili, this was a very interesting derivation. V'hu eid oira oyada. He was a witness who saw or knew. So he said it has to be something where it's possible to have testimony where you saw, but you don't know, or where you knew, where you didn't see. So remember, we explained with Shelley that I could have saw. What happens is Yitzi claims that Shelley owes him money. And Shelley says that Yitzi never gave him money. Now, I saw Yitzi count out money to Shelley. I don't know if it was a loan, but since Shelley said he never took any money from Yitzi, it proves him a kafran. So that's a case where I saw, but I didn't know. As the Gemara says, Be'edos ha-miskayemes b're'iyah. This is edus that could be upheld by seeing it below Yediyah without knowing the nature, or be Yediyah or knowing about it below Re'iyah without seeing it, Akasim Medaber. And that could only be by money. So it could be that I saw Yitzi counting out to him the money, even though I didn't know it was a loan. Or I could be that I heard Shelley admit that he owes money to Yitzi, even though I didn't see Yitzi give him the money. So Amalei Rapapa Labaya, Lema Rabbi Yossi Aglili, less later Rabacha. It must be that Rabbi Yossi Aglili doesn't hold of heavy circumstantial evidence. The Tanya Rabacha Omer, Gamal ha'oicher bein agmalim. If a camel is in heat, that means that a camel is what we call frisky. He's about to mate. So when the camel is about to mate, he gets meshuga. So gamal or oicher bein agmalim, and it's called oicher because they have relations back to back. So it's called oicher, back. So gamal or oicher bein agmalim. If a camel is in heat, v'nimtze gamal horig b'tzidai, and you find a camel dead on the side of him, even if we didn't see that the camel killed him, we say that he's chayiv, the owner of the camel that was in heat is chayiv. That's circumstantial evidence. Di'i is later Ravacha, b'dinei nefashis nami mishkachasla. We also have a case of yoda v'loy ra, where you know even though you didn't see it. Reb Shimon ben Shetach, like the case of Reb Shimon ben Shetach. The Tanya Reb Shimon ben Shetach, Erev Benachama. This means I shouldn't see consolation. Im loyra isi echad shirotz achar chaveru l'churba. I saw Chatzkel running after Shmuel into a room. V'rotzti achrov, and I saw Chatzkel running with murderous intent. And I ran after him. And by the time I got into the room, umatzasi sayef biyadai, I found a knife in his hand, v'dam metaftef, with blood dripping on it, v'horig mefarper, and the man was in the throes of death. So amarti loy Russia, no one else is here. Mi harga lezeh, oy ani o ata. Who killed this person? Either I or you. Now, if there would be a second witness over here, we could take you to court. I can't make you liable in court. You need two witnesses, and I'm only one witness. But Hashem should collect the debt from you. The killer did not budge from there until he was bitten by a poisonous snake and he died. So we see that Reb Shimon ben Shetach held that if there would be two witnesses, even though Reb Shimon ben Shetach didn't see him stick the knife in, but there was circumstantial evidence because he had a knife in his hand with blood and there was nobody else around, you would be able to give testimony. So then in the case of murder, it's also a case of Yoda v'lo ra, where he knew even though he didn't see. Says the Gemara, afilu teima, Yisleider Rabbi Yacha, you could even hold of Rabbi Yacha. But Bishlam Yediyah B'lo Riyah, you're right. You could have a case of knowing without seeing, Mishkachasla. El Riyah B'lo Yediyah Eichem Mishkachasla. By murder, you don't have seeing without knowing. Because if you see, Miloi Boy Meida, if you see, but you don't know. In other words, you don't know if it was a Jew or a guy, the person who was killed. You don't know if he was healthy or a treifa. Miloi Boy Meida, don't you have to know? If he was a guy or a yid, if he had a fatal flaw, or Yishalem Halik, Shema Minah. Therefore, the only case of Ra or Yada is only by Mammon. Says the Gemara. One more thing the Gemara tries to extrapolate. It's interesting that we have 31 Zoomers and no Marshall, no Mark, no Dr. Block, no Aaron Swade, missing a lot of our great people. Just want you to know, Rabbi say, that every time one of you aren't here, I feel it. Feel it. No Gedali Angle, feel it. Get on the phone and get to work, guys. These people are missing. Got to send them a truancy note. Says the Gemara, Shema Mina, Kosovo Rabbi Yossi Aglili, it would seem to be that Rabbi Yossi Aglili holds, Mashbia Eide Knas Potter, that if you give an oath about a penalty, you're potter. Di so kedaita chayiv, nehei diya b'loy re'iyah ashkechan la. Even though you could have a case where you know it without seeing it, even though you could have a case where you know it without seeing it, In other words, again, we have to learn it's going according to Ravacha, that circumstantial is enough. And you saw a man chasing a woman into the room, and she was a virgin, and now she's not a virgin. So the circumstantial evidence is enough. But how do you have seeing without knowing? Without knowing, how do you know if the girl was a Yiddish or a Gaya? Milay bay meida nachris baal bas Yisrael baal. Don't you have to know if it was Basula Baal or Ba'ula Baal? So it must be that it's clear that Rabbi Yossi Aglili that says it has to be able to be Ohoda, Ora, it can't be talking about Eidei Knas. That's a good proof. And here is a name that I didn't even mention, but Baruch Hashem, we're joined now by Richard Rosenzweig. Richard, a good Zuma to you. It's good to have you. Wonderful to have you, as a matter of fact. And Richard, we are holding on Daf Lamed Dalet Amud Aleph, 2 lines from the bottom. 2 lines from the bottom. Yosef Rav Amnuna Kamed Rav Yehuda. Rav Amnuna was sitting before Rav Yehuda. Yosef Rav Yehuda was sitting, and they inquired of him. I say, I counted out money to you, Shelley, in front of Yitz and Menachem. Ve'edim roin oisai b'chutz. And witnesses saw this transaction on the outside. So Shelley didn't know the witnesses existed. Right? Shelley didn't know that there were witnesses. So, and what's the din? So the Gemara says, well, give us the whole case. What is Shelley saying? I don't know why Shelley is not giving us a view of anything but his ceiling fan. But Shelley, are you there? That's better. It's giving us a view of his ceiling fan. That's better. We have to know what's going on, Shelley. Right? I counted out money to you. You thought it was just us privately. But Menachem and Yitz are looking in from your window. So, Amalei Rav Amnuna v'alo matayin. What's Shelley's claim? If Shelley, not knowing that anybody was watching, says, this is what we call lahadam. Lahadam is short for lo yayid dvar me'aylam. It never happened. You never counted out money to me. Holds a kafran. Then he's proven to be a liar, and he has to pay up. Amar, if he says, yeah, Rabbi Weiss, you counted out money to me in Shaklei, v'didi Shaklei, but you were counting out money that you owed me. So then, since Yitz and Nachman know nothing, they can't disagree with that. They're only outside the window. They don't know what the nature is. They don't know if I was paying him off or giving him a loan. So if witnesses would come, they would be worth nothing. Says Gemara, Rav Amnuna says, you've described the situation perfectly. I mean, Rabbi Yehuda said to Rav Amnuna, you've described the situation perfectly. You've gained entry into the Beis Medrash. Amalei Amnuna at Ulta. You Amnuna, arise and enter. You've described it perfectly. You pass the faher and come on in. Now the Gemara tells us another case. Here, I say to Shelley, Mana manisalach b'tzad amud zeh. I gave you money next to this pillar. You see this pillar over here in front of the library? I gave you money next to this pillar. Amalai, Shelley looks at me and says, Lo yavarti b'tzad amud zeh. I didn't stand by this pillar. Sorry, I didn't stand by this pillar. Also, Trey Sadeh, 2 witnesses come, and asidu bei the hishten mayim b'tzad amud zeh, and testified that he modestly urinated behind the pillar. So they proved him to be a liar because he said he never stood by this pillar. Amreish Lakish holds a kafran. He's proven to be a liar, and therefore he has to pay me. Because I said that I gave him money, and he says he was never by the pillar, and they proved that he was by the pillar.
But isn't there a thing of modesty? Then maybe that's a reason. If that's where he was, then they only have to say that. That could be a reason why he wouldn't want to say the truth, because it's not.
In court, you don't say I was never there. They're not going to accept that in court. Maskul Rav Nachman. So Rav Nachman says, Haidina Parsa. This is a Persian way of judging it. This is different than Rabbi Kranz's protest. Mi kamar me oilam. Did Shelley say I was never by the pillar? He says I wasn't by this pillar with you, Rabbi Weiss. Be'esik zeh kamar lei. He just meant I didn't do business with you by the pillar. He didn't say I was never by the pillar. Ikadamre, but there's another version. I say to Shelley, I counted out money for you by this pillar. Amalei, Shelley says, I've never been by the pillar by the Brooklyn Public Library. Amalei, I was never here. Nafka Beit Tzadi, so then Yitz and Menachem come. The Hishnemayim B'tzad Amud Zeh, that he urinated by the pillar. Rav Nachman is a kafir, he's proven to be a liar. Amalei Rav Rav Nachman. Rav said to Rav Nachman, and this is a yesod. This is a yesod. Things that are not on a person's mind, they're not perceptive about it. A good example of this is when you were a young child, you didn't notice when your mother left to the mikveh. You didn't notice. It's not something that was on your mind to spot. So here the Gemara says, Shelley thought he was never by the pillar. That he went to the bathroom by the pillar, it's not something that he would remember. It's inconsequential. Something that's not on a person's mind, he'll do it without noticing. He went to the bathroom. He doesn't remember that he went back to the bathroom next to the pillar. It was inconsequential. So that doesn't make him a liar. Now, we get to the final derivation of Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon says that how do we know that Shavuos Daf is only by a tfias moment, by a claim of money? We know it because it's Amar Reb Shimon I'm Yechayev Kan, V'chayev B'Pikadon. Yechayev by Shavuos Daf and Yechayev by deposit. Just like by a deposit, there's tfias moment, so also by Shavuos Daf. And he also says it's a kal v'chaymer. So Makku Allah b'Marava. They laughed about it in the West. That's in Eretz Yisrael. Says the Gemara, "My chucha." What was so funny? The Ketani ma lepikadon lo yasa b'mushba kenishba. Just like by a deposit, they didn't make one who was administered with an oath, like one who self makes an oath, says the Gemara. Why by Pikadon? Is if we impose an oath, are you not chayiv Shavuos Pikadon? Mushpa mepi atzmai be'edus Reb Shimon minale. How does he know by a Shavuos Edus that if he makes his own oath that he's chayiv, the Gomer mi Pikadon, he learns it out from Pikadon. So Pikadon nami, so deposit also we should learn out an imposed oath from Shavuos Edus. Mushba mepi acher nigmar me'edus. Says the Gemara, Umay Chuka, Dilma Reb Shimon bekal v'chaymer ma'isela. Maybe he learns it out from a kal v'chaymer. In other words, he learns out that by maybe he learns out that by Shavuos Ha'edus, you're chayiv, even for a Shavua Mepi Atzmai, not that he learns it out from Pikadon, but he learns it out from a self-kal v'chaymer. Mepi Acherem chayiv, if you're chayiv for something that's imposed upon you for others, Mepi Atzmai loy kol shechem. Surely if you make the oath yourself, you're definitely chayiv. Ella, what's the laugh? What was laughable? That in Eretz Yisrael they laughed. Ella chucha amazed kishogeg. The ketani male pikadon shekain loy asa mushba nishba and mazid kishogeg. That by a deposit, if he swears falsely, in other words, Shelley fears falsely about the deposit willfully, he's not going to be chayiv. Michtei. Mezid gabi edus minale. How do we know that you're chayiv by Shavuos edus, even if it's a willful swearing? The like siv bevenelam, because it doesn't say, and he was unaware. By Pikadon, it also doesn't say, and he was unaware. Hachanami like siv bevenelam. Amalu Rav Huna, Umay Chuka. Dilma mezid labi kishagig b'Pikadon, mimi'ila Reb Shimon Gamala. Oh, the plot thickens. You see, Eddie, if he's mulled b'kachim, if he has benefit from kachim, he sits under a beam of kachim and gets shade, a shava pruta, he's chayiv and he has to bring a carbon asham me'ila. That's only if he does it b'shogeg. If he does it b'mezid, he's not chayiv. So it could be that Reb Shimon holds that we learn that mezid is lav k'shogeg by Pikadon, even though it doesn't say v'nelam, from me'ila. Dilma mezid the lav k'shogeg b'Pikadon mi'ila Reb Shimon Gamala. V'hainu hukucha. And this is the laughter. Why do you learn it out from me'ila and say that you're only chayiv if it's a shogeg? Ad gamala me'ila nigmala me'edus. Learn out Shavuos Edus, we are chayiv both b'mezid and b'shogeg. So now the Gemara says, let's see which one it's more similar to. It makes more sense to compare to Shavuos Pikadon to Me'ila. Shekain Me'ila. Both are talking about trespass. Shelley is trespassing my deposit, and when Eddie uses kachim, he's trespassing on kachim. So that's a similarity. Says the Gemara Adarabba. Me'edus avalei l'meila. You should learn it out from testimony. Shavuos Eidus. Shekein techete mitechete, because by both of them it says techete. So now the Gemara is going to say, let's see which one it's more similar to. Mistavra mi'ila havaleila meila, if it makes sense to learn it out from mi'ila. Shekein, mi'ila, as we both said, by Pekadon and by Me'ila, there's an Indian of trespass, whether Shelley is trespassing on my deposit or Eddie is trespassing on the property of Hekdesh. And both pertain bakol to everyone, right? Ma'ashenkein Shavuos Eidus is only by men and rechoikim and kesherim. B'kivua, both the Shavuos Pekadon and Me'ila are a fixed carbon. Ma'ashenkein Shavuos Eidus is a carbon oil v'yored, a sliding scale carbon. Chaimesh, both Shavuos Pekadon and Me'ila have an addition of a fifth, and both of them are an ocean, a carbon ocean, while the Shavuos Eidus is a carbon oil v'yored. So the Gemara says, okay, but there are also similarities to Shavuos Eidus. Adrabah, me'edus avileila meilef. You should learn out from Shavuos Eidus. Shekein chet. By both it says chatas. When it says chet, it means the lashon of chatas. And by both it's hedyet, property of non-kachim, right? Both Shavuos Eidus and Shavuos Pekadon don't have to do with kachim. B'Shavua, both are involved with an oath, while Me'ila has no oath. And Tovei v'Kafrei, and both have a claim and a denial, while by Me'ila there's no claim and denial. And Owen, they both have OO. So it sounds like it's pretty big toss-up. Well, let's see how many things are by Me'ila. Trespass, it's by all people, it's benefiting, it's a fixed carbon, it's a fifth, and a guilt offering. That's 6. This is a close one. Well, over here it's a lashon of chatas, hedyet, does not kachim, shvua, that's 3, tavei v'kafre, that's called 1, claim and a denial, and Owen, so it's 6 against 5. Hanach nefishin. So that's why we learn out from Me'ila that it's not by a Mazid and not from Eidus. So then what were they laughing about in Eretz Yisrael? Elamai chucha. So says the Gemara, Ki asa Rav Papa, Rav Huna Breid Reb Yeshua, Mibei Rav Imrei, Hainu chucha, Michtei, Reb Shimon Gezeirah Shava Gomer. At the end, Reb Shimon uses Gezeirah Shava Techete to learn out Shavuos Eidus from Shavuos Pekadon. Lama lei de Parach. Why does he ask? Malik Pekadon. Shekein loy asa by Mushba Kenishba and Mezid Kishageg. If you have a Gezeirah Shava, then there shouldn't be these differences. Says the Gemara, my chucha, what's the question? Dilma kiparach mekame to take him like Gezeirah Shava. He asked before he established that there's a Gezeirah Shava. Basa to come like Gezeirah Shava loy parach. He wouldn't refute the Kal V'chaimer, because the Maisa is, then we would say from the Gezeirah Shava they have the same halachas. Says the Gemara V'loi, I v'amalu Rav Bar Itay Mantana v'amalu Rav Bar Itay Rabbanan Mantana that Shavuos HaPekadon loy nitna zedayna lekapara, who holds that a Shavuos HaPekadon there's no carbon for a mazid. Rabbi Shimoni, but if he has the Gezeirah Shava, then there should be just like by Shavuos Eidus, there's a carbon by Mazid, so there should be by Shavuos Bikadon also. Says the Gemara, well, maybe you're right. You're right. Maybe Mazid, Rab Shimon Taka holds, there's no carbon by Pikadon, because he learns it out from Me'ilah, like we established. Dilma Mazid Kishagig Park, the Gamula Me'ilah, the Hanach Nefishin, because there's 6 similarities to Mila, where it's only by Shagig, and by Shavuos Eidus is only 5. Aval Mushba Kanishba Loi Parach. But he would not ask about Mushba Kanishba, because Einach Hanami, now that he has the Gzeir Shava of Seches to Secheta, he would hold that by Shavuos HaPikadon, you would also be chayiv if it's imposed by an oath, because we learn it out from the Gzeir Shava. Says the Gemara, so then why don't you use the Gzeir Shava the other way? The Seder Eidus, the Sigma Law B'Bikadon, we should then learn out Eidus from Pikadon, that Mazid the Lav Kishagig, that you're not chayiv by a Mazid, just like by Pikadon you're not chayiv by a Mazid. Ma Pikadon Shagigin Mazid Lai, Af Eidus Shagigin Mazid Lai, Ki Echi the Yalav Pikadon Me'ilah, just like we learn out the deposit from Me'ilah. Says the Gemara, no, but we still have the fact. La'achi Kasav Rachmana Le'edus, that's why the Torah says Shavuos Ha'edus, Gabe Shavuos Bitui, Begabe Tumas Mikdash U'Kedoshav. It says it by oath of utterance, and it says by Tumah entering into the Mikdash or eating kosher. The Bekula Nema Behem V'Nelam. Both by Shavuos Bitui and by Tumas Mikdash U'Kedoshav, it says unaware. V'kan Loi Nema Behem V'Nelam. And by Shavuos Ha'edus, it doesn't say V'Nelam. That means that you're chayiv even if you are aware. L'chayiv al amazing kishageg, and therefore we don't learn it out from Pikadon, which we learn out from Me'ilah. Wow, that's a real mouthful. Now we're going to do the Chumash Rabbi say.